All right, it is Friday, October 13th, and a major blow to Obamacare. President Trump taking a scalpel to health care, carving new options for the American people. What this means for you and for your family.
Give you the benefit of the doubt that you are operating off of contacts, leaks, whatever you call them. But I would just offer to you the advice I'd say, maybe develop some better sources.
Get better sources. That message from the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly's surprise press conference, and what he has to say to the fake news media.
And 'tis the season for shopping. The Black Friday fate of dozens of malls across the country has just been decided. Fox and Friends First continues right now.
Good morning. You are watching Fox and Friends First on this Friday the 13th.
That's right.
I'm Jillian Mealy.
And I'm Rob Schmidt. Thanks for starting your day with us this morning. And we do have to go straight to a Fox News alert. We have just learned a New Orleans police officer has been shot and killed in the line of duty. The city's chief of police confirming the sad news just moments ago. At this point, the department not releasing the name of that officer.
And in fact, details are still coming in right now, and circumstances surrounding the shooting unclear at this point. Here's what we know. The suspect was hit by return fire. At this point, the suspect is in the hospital and is under arrest. We will keep you updated with any new developments.
Absolutely will. All right, to other news now and getting into politics. President Trump taking matters into his own hands in a step toward repealing and replacing Obamacare, signing an executive order to make new options for the American people.
Garrett Tenney is live in Washington with more details. Garrett.
Rob and Jillian, good morning to you. The White House is describing this executive order as one of the first steps it can take towards repealing and replacing Obamacare on its own. In this order, President Trump directed the Departments of Labor, Treasury, and Health and Human Services to make it easier for individuals and small businesses to buy health insurance across state lines through association health plans. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul was in attendance for the signing ceremony in the Roosevelt Room, where the president predicted that millions of people will benefit from the change and said, unlike Obamacare, it will cost the government nothing.
The cost of the Obamacare has been so outrageous, it is absolutely destroying everything in its wake.
This reform, if it works and goes as planned, will allow millions of people to get insurance across state lines at an inexpensive price.
Those changes are still a ways down the road, though, and administration officials say it may take a couple of years for the proposals to be finalized. That's not the only action the White House is taking to dismantle Obamacare, though. Last night, the White House announced that it will no longer make payments to health insurers under the Affordable Care Act's cost-sharing reduction plan. Those payments, which could end immediately, are a key part of Obamacare and help subsidize the cost of insurers offering coverage to Americans with lower incomes. The White House said it's ending the payments because Congress has not appropriated any funds to make them. And in a statement said Congress needs to repeal and replace the disastrous Obamacare law and provide real relief to the American people. Democrats are blasting the move, with House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi calling it sabotage, saying in a statement, thanks to President Trump's executive sabotage, the millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions could lose access to the affordable health coverage they and their families rely on. Several other leading Democrats are also now vowing to sue the administration over those payments. Rob and Jillian?
Okay. This gets more and more complicated by the day with health care. Garrett, thank you so much.
You got it.
The raging California wildfires, now the deadliest in the state's modern history. 31 dead, hundreds more still missing at this hour, and at least 21 fires are still burning. 200,000 acres scorched. That's as big as New York City.
It was all around my house, and I thought, oh, the helicopters are here and everything, and then all of a sudden, there goes the house. It was gone. I can't cry anymore. I've cried for a couple hours. I don't think I can cry anymore.
Wow.
Fire investigators are looking into whether downed power lines could have ignited the fires. 2 North Carolina prison employees dead after a violent and fiery escape attempt.
Be advised, we do have a mass casualty incident. I have multiple patients. Some of them are critical. We need to clear some beds. An officer struck multiple times with a hammer.
Correctional officer Justin Smith and former officer Veronica Darden were killed after inmates set the sewing plant on fire in an attempt to break free. Area schools put on temporary lockdown. 10 other employees and 4 prisoners were hurt. No one escaped.
Well, after 5 years in captivity, an American and her family are now free. Caitlin Coleman and her husband, Canadian, were kidnapped in 2012 while traveling as tourists in Afghanistan. They have 3 young kids now. All were born as they were held captive. But Coleman's husband is refusing to get on a plane to the United States. He fears he'll be arrested over his sister's alleged ties to a Guantanamo Bay detainee. That complicates things even further. The Trump administration playing a major role in helping the Pakistani military to carry out this rescue. Former Army intel analyst Brett Velikovich says this is a game changer in the war on terror.
There's a new counterterrorism sheriff in town, and that we're going to see that more and more when it comes to these operations. It's very rare for the U.S. government to actually collaborate with a foreign country to actually conduct a hostage rescue on an American citizen.
Well, the president insisting this shows that Pakistan now respects the United States. The U.S. says there is no indication on if Coleman's husband will face an arrest.
Brand new disturbing details in the Harvey Weinstein scandal. TMZ reporting Harvey's contract allowed him to keep his job even if sexual harassment suits came into play, as long as he paid the settlement costs. And now police on both sides of the Atlantic, in London and in New York City, are investigating him. The news comes on the heels of another harassment bombshell. Amazon's top boss, Roy Price, suspended after a TV producer accused him of harassing her in 2015. And while Hollywood is quick to take aim at President Trump or make fun of the First Lady, it took Hillary Clinton, champion of women's rights, took her days to announce Weinstein. Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president, calling out the Hollywood hypocrites, saying any woman who stayed silent was wrong not to speak out.
Let's go back to the Oscars a few weeks ago. Can you imagine, for every unfunny political joke that was told, for every time the president's name was invoked, had we replaced that with Weinstein or rape or sexual predator? Or if somebody actually had used her power on the stage. There were many so-called powerful, rich, successful Hollywood women accepting awards, giving awards. What if one of them, over these many, many years that this has been going on allegedly, what if one of them stood up in front of a live TV worldwide audience and said, you know what, instead of thanking my mother and my 3rd grade teacher and my producers and my agents, I'm going to tell you a story about what goes on here in Hollywood. Any woman out there who remains silent as the next generation suffered under this sexual predatory culture and this man, then they are complicit here, and they have no right to stand up and say that they speak for women.
All right, jumping into another topic now, completely different. And we're talking about the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, who we got a nice introduction to yesterday as he made himself very public. This is actually a guy that I met not too long ago and was very impressed by, and now he's running the White House, and he's got a big job.
Yes, he does,
Yeah.
and he came out swinging yesterday, that's for sure. Let's just hear what he had to say to reporters.
I'm not quitting today. I don't believe, and I just talked to the president, I don't think I'm being fired today. It is astounding to me how much is misreported. I will give you the benefit of the doubt that you are operating off of contacts, leaks, whatever you call them. But I would just offer to you the advice I'd say, maybe develop some better sources.
I mean, he took over this role in July. And he says, look, I'm tired as much as everybody is. When I come in the morning, I read quotes I allegedly said, in articles, and I know I didn't say them. He said it's frustrating.
He has it's a very tough job dealing with a media that has a especially high level of scrutiny on this White House, and is going after a number of sources that they say they have within the White House. And it's a tough job that he has. It's a lot harder than running the DHS from what he said. And here is Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, who is a Fox News contributor and somebody that knows politics quite well. And here's what he has to say on the matter.
He's a United States Marine. He's a man who knows what it's like to be shot at by bad people shooting real bullets, not just a bunch of blowhards sitting in the press room. He lost his own son, as you pointed out in the last segment, in this long war. His whole demeanor exudes confidence. He's not quitting. He's not going to be fired. He's not frustrated, except by inaccurate news stories. That's there. You got to ask yourself this. Why is it that so many of our colleagues in the media business believe anonymous sources and disbelieve an official like John Kelly speaking on the record? Why is that?
Puts it into perspective a little bit there.
Yeah, it's a tough situation all around. I mean, I do think that there are bound to be some frustrations within the White House. I mean, it's a tough time for everybody that's working in that White House, and obviously it's a tough president to handle because he's a cowboy and he does what he wants. So I mean, it's a tough job all around. But the fact is, he comes out and he says basically get some better sources because the people that are telling you things aren't altogether.
And Kelly also added that President Trump's tweets do not make his job harder. That was one of those questions that was asked yesterday.
Yeah. All right. Well, 10 minutes after the hour right now, violence in Chicago continues to skyrocket. The city now seeing 500 shooting deaths this year alone, and it's only October.
Chicago is out of control. I don't know what they're doing in Chicago to have this many shootings and this many killings.
Why our next guest says blame Chicago's mayor, Rahm Emanuel.
And remember the Democratic state rep who wished for President Trump's assassination? Well, she's back. Wait until you hear what she did this time.
But first, happy 242nd birthday to the U.S. Navy.
Happy birthday.
Here are some of the proud American photos that you have shared with us. We love to see them.
Good morning. Welcome back. Once again, NFL players protesting our national anthem during Thursday night football. As you can see here, it's Malcolm Jenkins and some others from the Philadelphia Eagles raising fists before the game against the Carolina Panthers. A Tennessee Titans player, though, is threatening to retire early if the NFL forces him to stand during the anthem. Wide receiver Rashard Matthews tweeting, quote, "I will be done playing football." The post deleted shortly after, though. Rob?
All right, one Louisiana sheriff taking a stand against the NFL players' national anthem protests. The Bossier Parish Sheriff's Department is boycotting a local Ford dealership as long as the automaker advertises with the NFL, writing, quote, "Yes, the NFL players have a right to protest as they deem necessary, but we have a right to spend our money elsewhere." Last year, they spent more than $300,000 on Ford police vehicles, so that could end up hurting. See how that goes.
Chicago gun violence hitting an unsettling stat over the weekend. 500 people have now been killed in shootings this year alone. It's a big number, and we still have a few more months left. Here now to weigh in is Fox News political analyst and a Chicago native as well, Gianno Caldwell. Gianno, good morning to you. We've watched this spike. It was 2014, 2015, 2016. We all thought at some point this has got to level off. It's just not happening. What do you have to say?
Yeah, and there's numbers out that suggest that it's now 549 that have been impacted by the shootings in Chicago. This is disturbing on every level, but I'll remind you of one name, Laquan McDonald, an individual who was shot by the police. And, of course, Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, withheld that tape so he can win re-election. At that point, to me, he showed how corrupt he really is. This is an individual who has single-handedly handicapped the police from doing their job in order to not get public outrage when there's things that happen. This is an unsafe city. This is a city where my family has been personally impacted by the violence. My little brother, over Memorial Day weekend, one of his best friends was shot and he died in his arms. So when I think about these kind of situations that occur, I have no love whatsoever for the mayor of Chicago, who I believe is taking the ability of the police to do their jobs out of their hands and had his focus sorely on the city sanctuary city status.
Gianno, I want to get your take on what President Trump had to say on Hannity the other day. So let's go ahead and listen to that and then get your reaction.
Chicago is out of control. I don't know what they're doing in Chicago to have this many shootings and this many killings and all of the different things that are going on. This is not like it's the United States of America. Pure and simple, that's bad management. That's bad politics. We have incredible police in this country. They could stop it if they were allowed to do their job.
So could they stop it if they were allowed to do their job, in your opinion?
I believe so, and I think President Trump hit it on the head when he said bad management. You got a mayor, and this is something I've heard no one mention, who's protecting the city's sanctuary city status And I believe it's not because he cares about the undocumented immigrants there. I don't think that's that at all. What most people don't realize is these folks that are there illegally, they're counted by the census. So whether you be a citizen or not, you're counted by the census, which determines the congressional districts in Illinois. There's 18 congressional districts. The majority are ran by Democrats, which leads to jobs, opportunity, and power. This mayor, Rahm Emanuel, is only concerned about enriching himself and the power of the Democratic Party, which the Democratic Party under House Speaker Mike Madigan there, they draw the districts, would determine if they're going to lean Democrat or Republican. This is a long play by this party. This is a long play by this mayor, and obviously he's disenfranchising the citizens, especially the African-American ones on the south and west sides of Chicago, in this process.
And whether or not he's inspiring police to do their jobs is a whole other conversation. But I want to get into, this story that you just led into a moment ago about your brother who had a best friend shot and killed, I believe, right in front of him. Can you tell us exactly how and what part of the city that happened?
Yeah, so he was on the south side of Chicago with two of his friends in the car during Memorial Day weekend. And two individuals walked up to the car and they riddled the car with 25 bullets, two males. My little brother thankfully lived, but his best friend died in his arms. And Jesus.
I mean, do you know what kind of weapons were they using? I mean, that's just outrageous.
No, I don't know what kind of weapons they were using. What I'm thankful for is God's power, His grace, His favor that allowed my brother to live. I mean, when you think about this and when it impacts you so directly, how could you say nothing? And I'm thankful that I have a platform as the largest cable network in the country to tell this story, because there's so many stories that aren't personalized. We see these numbers on a regular basis. 500 people, over 500 people shot, murdered in Chicago. And it's become just something we say on a weekly basis. It's not personalized. But
it just becomes a number. And the story doesn't even get out anymore because it's been happening so much.
100%. But this impacted my family, and I take this very personally. And the mayor's inaction on this just is very telling, and I'm hoping that no one chooses to vote for Rahm Emanuel. He does not need to be reelected. He really needs to be impeached, in my opinion.
All right, Gianna, we got to run, but thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. Remember the Democratic state representative who wished for President Trump's assassination? It's another brilliant move. Well, she's back.
Carly Shimkus with Fox News headlines, 24/7, Sirius XM 115. Here with the new remarks, Carly?
Yeah, that's right. At it again. So this is a Missouri state senator. Her name is Maria Chappelle Nadal, and she's under fire this morning for posting a meme on Twitter that compares President Trump to Adolf Hitler. This is the woman right here. She says she shared that meme on Twitter because she was upset by the president's recent tweets suggesting Puerto Rico spend more money aiding themselves during Hurricane Maria recovery. But, this is not the first time she said something controversial on social media. Like you said, in August, she was investigated by the Secret Service after she suggested the president should be assassinated. And now there are new calls for her resignation this morning. Gloria on Twitter literally says, you need to resign. Spooky says, yes, because saying things you don't agree with and killing 13 million people are equivalent. And Jen said on Twitter, way to keep it classy. This is disgusting by any standards, but it doesn't appear you have any. Now, this woman is saying that she's well within her First Amendment rights to post something of this nature. Whew.
And she is. But what are you going to do about it? I mean, it's nonsense, but there you go. Let's talk about Anthony Bourdain. This whole Harvey Weinstein thing, he's actually involved in this because his girlfriend has a history with Harvey.
Yes,
and he's come out against Hillary Clinton.
That's right. And he is really taking Hillary Clinton to task for her recent comments on this whole Harvey Weinstein scandal. She did an interview on CNN, and here's what she had to say. Take a listen.
Shocked. I was appalled. It was something that was just intolerable in every way.
So Bourdain, who is no fan of President Trump, took to Twitter with these remarks. And I have to say, Hillary's interview with Fareed Zakaria was shameful in its deflection and its disingenuousness. Know that Hillary Clinton is not. She's not stupid or unsophisticated about the world. The Weinstein story has been out there for years. Secretary Clinton was one of the most intelligent, well-prepared, well-briefed politicians ever. So yes, I'd hope for a better response. And Rob, like you said, he is very connected to this story. His girlfriend is actually one of Harvey Weinstein's accusers, so it hits, it's a very personal story for him as well.
Yeah, he's right in the middle of it.
Yeah. So this next one I find quite hilarious because Roger Goodell sometimes has been slow to respond to things. Well, not his wife.
Yeah,
though.
That's a very good point. So a new report shows that Roger Goodell's wife, Jane Skinner right here, was using a fake Twitter account to defend his honor. So Jane Skinner Goodell used the name Joan Smith online to tweet things like this. Reads like press release from Players Union. You can do better reporting. D. Smith sounds like D. Trump with inaccurate firebomb. She also said Goodell courageous and was right in the end. Leadership is hard. Commish is doing same. Give him credit. So the reaction to this report is kind of funny because a lot of guys now are saying, well, she's like the greatest woman ever. Like, I want a wife that would do something like that.
She's defending her man.
Yeah,
I give her credit for that.
So she's, I guess, the real MVP of the household.
There you go.
You could say that. Sure, why not? Thank you,
Carly.
Carly.
Got a good marriage.
Appreciate
All right,
it.
Carly, thanks so much. All right, 27 minutes after the hour, President Obama back on the campaign trail after a nice break, and he's not alone.
Let me just say this. Self-promotion is a terrible thing, but somebody's got to do it. I am a master legislator. I know the budget to the...
So there's Nancy Pelosi. Is this really who the Democrats want representing them at this point?
We are back with a Fox News alert confirming sad news just moments ago. A New Orleans police officer has been shot and killed in the line of duty. His name is not being released just yet. The circumstances surrounding the shooting unclear at this point. Here's what we know. The suspect was hit by return fire and is in the hospital and under arrest. We'll keep you updated as this breaking story develops. Meantime, President Trump expected to rip up the Iran nuclear deal today. The decision would put Congress in charge of deciding whether or not to reimpose sanctions within 60 days that are part of the agreement. According to White House officials, the new agreement will, quote, deny the Iranian regime all paths to a nuclear weapon. President Trump will lay out the full plan in an afternoon speech from the White House. Rob?
Okay, for the first time, we are getting to hear the sound that could very well be linked to these mysterious and bizarre sonic attacks that physically injured 22 American diplomats working in Cuba. Some of the victims who even got brain damage from this say it sounded something very similar to this, which has now been deemed, this sound we're going to show you here, or let's let you listen to it, has been deemed safe. But this is kind of what it sounds like. Okay, so imagine that much louder to the point that it gives you damage to your ears and to your mind. I cannot even imagine. The State Department has yanked 60% of the U.S. staff out of Havana in Cuba since the attacks. Cuba has denied any involvement in this, but the United States saying that they are responsible for the diplomats there. The admission that we have been waiting for from accused deserter Bo Bergdahl, the disgraced Army sergeant set to plead guilty on Monday to desertion and misbehavior before the enemy. This after being captured by the Taliban in 2009 while on patrol in Afghanistan and then held captive. In 2014, the Obama administration traded Bergdahl for 5 Taliban suspected terrorists who were being held at Guantanamo Bay in a move that really infuriated a lot of people and a lot of members of the media. If convicted, Bergdahl could face a life sentence.
Congress couldn't get it done, so President Trump is taking repealing and replacing into his own hands, signing an executive order targeting Obamacare. Garrett Tenney is live from Washington with what's different this time. Garrett?
Well, Robin Gillian, the White House says that it's essentially been forced to take this action on its own because of Congress's inability to pass health care reform. The goal with this new executive order is to expand access to health care for both individuals and small businesses by allowing them to band together to buy health insurance across state lines through association health plans. At a signing ceremony, the president said this change, along with making lower premium health insurance plans more widely available, will benefit millions of Americans.
This will allow thousands of small business employers to have the same purchasing power as large employers to get more affordable and generous insurance options for their workers.
Administration officials later said it will likely still be a few years before the details of the executive order are finalized and those cheaper plans actually become available. That's not the only action the White House is taking to dismantle Obamacare, though. Last night, it announced the administration will no longer make payments to health insurers under the Affordable Care Act's cost-sharing reduction plan. Those payments are a key part of Obamacare and help subsidize the cost of insurers offering coverage to Americans with middle to lower incomes. In a statement, the White House said the decision is really Congress's own fault, saying there is no appropriation for cost-sharing reduction payments to insurance companies under Obamacare. In light of this analysis, the government cannot lawfully make the cost-sharing reduction payments. Democrats are blasting the move, though, with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying, having failed to repeal the law in Congress, the president is sabotaging the system, using a wrecking ball to single-handedly rip apart our health care system. Now, those monthly payments to insurers could end immediately, and that move is expected to rattle the already unsteady insurance marketplaces, which will also likely add pressure on Congress to act. Robin, Jillian?
Garrett Tenney live in Washington. Thank you.
Garrett, thanks. Democrats hitting the campaign trail, but is this who voters really want representing them?
Let me just say this. Self-promotion is a terrible thing, but somebody's got to do it. I am a master legislator. I know the budget to it.
Here to weigh in, former Ohio Senate Democratic Minority Leader Capri Cafaro. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely. Good morning.
So let's start here with this. If there's no real clear leader at this point in the Democratic Party, how do they plan to win over America?
It's going to be incredibly difficult, and you know, I'm sad to say that I've been a consistent critic of how the Democratic Party has been operating over the last few years, all the way back from 2014. You know, Democrats don't show up in midterm elections, for example. We never have. That has had an impact, for example, on the balance of power in the Senate. That has had an impact on the way that our states have functioned, because it is the legislatures and many of the statewide office holders that are elected in midterm elections that determine the redistricting process, which has, basically been controlled by Republicans, which means we don't have competitive districts. I mean, there are so many issues at stake, and it's my belief that, number one, we need to really have a new guard. I mean, I respect the work that Leader Pelosi has done over the decades, but we have a lot. We need to bring in younger people into the fray. We need to recruit more moderate individuals to run for office, and we need to focus on an economic message rather than what people see as, a message of the coastal elites.
Yeah, and Capri, my big question is, which way are they going to swing this thing? Because they have two options here. They can either swing it far out left and try to really go the anti-Trump, and move in that direction, or they can kind of move towards the center, which I think would be the better move for them, and try to capture all the people that are, don't really know what to think right now.
I agree with you. I mean, there really is kind of a binary choice right now. We've seen the growth of the progressive movement, with Bernie and this big sort of millennial push, and the Democratic socialists that have really ruffled a lot of feathers within the Democratic establishment, including in the race for Democratic National Committee chair between, establishment figure Tom Perez that kind of represented the Hillary camp, and then, Keith Ellison that represented the Bernie camp. The bottom line is neither of those camps, I believe, are the future of the Democratic Party. As someone coming from Ohio who is younger, again, we need to focus on the bread and butter kitchen table issues, focusing on the economy, not abandoning our social justice principles, but leading with what Americans really care about.
And then, I mean, there's also the chance, I mean, if you're thinking about who's going to run in the next election in 2020, I mean, you got Mark Cuban is thinking about doing it. Is Kamala Harris a contender? Would she even be considered? I mean, do you think she has a chance? She's very new.
Yeah, she is very new. I mean, obviously, California has a lot of delegates. I think it's a little too early to tell, but I think that it's a creature of the fact that I think that the Democrats are really looking for someone that is new. I think they see Kamala Harris as someone who is a bit like Barack Obama, who is new to the scene in the United States Senate, that is a little bit younger, that is outspoken and may have that charisma. But I think it's really showing that we have very limited choices, and that's not to knock Senator Harris, but more to say that I think we're looking for anyone to take the helm and to run in 2020, because there is simply no obvious choice for us going forward, and our current leadership is over 70 years old.
Real quick before we let you go, former President Barack Obama campaigning in West Virginia, which turned red for President Trump. What is your thought on that?
You know, I think that it's not ever a bad thing to reach out to red states. I think one of the reasons why we have lost is in the past and in 2016 is because, you know, we turned a blind eye to those communities that, you know, have kind of strayed from the Democrats but had traditionally been with us in the 20th century. So good for President Obama for reaching out, and maybe more Democrats can take, you know, his lead on that.
Yeah, they got some work to do in some of those states like Michigan and West Virginia, and some of those states they lost that they thought they had. All right, Capri, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Let's take a look at the weather right now, because we are still closely watching what's going on in California, and so is our meteorologist, Janice Dean. Good morning, Janice.
Yep, that's the big story. Unfortunately, we have a system across the northwest, but we're not getting any of that moisture into California. So that's going to be a problem. Low relative humidity. The temperatures are going to go up this weekend. No moisture in the forecast for the next 5 to 7 days. Elevated fire danger, not only for Northern California, but Southern California as well, where we have dozens of wildfires that continue to burn out of control. Low relative humidity again today. I mean, in the forecast, we're talking about below 10% low relative humidity, and that's going to be ongoing through the weekend. The fire weather is elevated to critical, and unfortunately, as we get through the weekend, this is not going to change. Sonoma fire, the Tubbs fire, 10% containment, and now over 34,000 acres burned. It's not a good situation out there. Prayers to all those firefighters that are out there with uncontrollable weather conditions.
Absolutely. Working hard, Janice. Thank you.
Relentless job that they have. All right, Janice, thanks. All right, 40 minutes after the hour now. Coming up, they have started fires, smashed windows, even injured police officers. Now, these college kids getting a dose of their own medicine. How one university is now cracking down on some of this campus craziness.
And 'tis the season for shopping. The Black Friday fate of dozens of malls across the country just decided.
All right, welcome back. In an effort to prevent similar violent riots like the ones at the University of California at Berkeley, the University of Wisconsin has approved new rules punishing students for disrupting campus speeches. The new policy allows officials to suspend students after their second violent offense. After a third time, those students could be expelled. Jillian.
Police officers going above and beyond the call of duty to restore a community symbol of patriotism. 5 Utah police officers, all of them former veterans as well, hand-delivered 5 brand new American flags to residents who had theirs stolen. The flags were donated by the American Legion, but so far no one has been caught. Still a wonderful act of kindness.
It certainly is, yeah. All right, a different kind of superhero story hitting the big screen.
That's right. Marshall follows the story of the first African-American Supreme Court justice. So is it worth your box office bucks?
Yeah, here with his review, founder of nerdtears.com and Fox News contributor Kevin McCarthy. Hey, Kev.
Hey, Rob and Jillian, good morning to you guys. Yeah, there's 2 major films opening up this week. As you mentioned, the first film, Marshall. This is an incredible film starring Chadwick Boseman. This actor has played incredible real-life characters in his career so far. He played James Brown. He played Jackie Robinson in 42. Now he's playing Thurgood Marshall, as you mentioned, the first African-American Supreme Court justice. This is early on in his career when he teams up with a gentleman named Sam Friedman, played by Josh Gad, to take on an incredible case that defined both of their careers. Sterling K. Brown, who you probably know from This Is Us, plays a character who's accused of rape. Kate Hudson's the accuser, and it's essentially this story about trying to defend Sterling K. Brown and see if they can get him a non-guilty verdict. And it's a really interesting story. The courtroom drama is incredible. I love a great courtroom film. I love being in a courtroom in regards to the way the dialogue is delivered in these scenes. It feels like you're watching an action film. I think it's fascinating when they can take dialogue dialogue scenes and make them feel like you're watching action. And that's a really big thing that the director does in this film. I thought Chadwick Boseman was fantastic. Josh Gad was fantastic as well. It's a very well done story, an important film as well, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. I do recommend seeing it. And again, it's really cool to see Thurgood Marshall kind of early on in his career, and you see the confidence this type of character has, and Boseman really nails it. And I can't wait to see him play Black Panther, which is the new Marvel film coming out next year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that sounds good.
The next one you also gave a 4 out of 5, I think, right? The Foreigner?
Yeah, listen, I grew up watching Jackie Chan movies, so I was super excited to see him back in an R-rated action film. I mean, Jackie Chan growing up for me was Rumble in the Bronx, Super Cop, Police Story. Obviously, we all know him from the Rush Hour films. He's 63 years old, which is obviously still young, but he's still kicking butt, and I love watching him in these action films like this. The storyline is pretty simple. Essentially, his daughter is killed, and he goes out for revenge looking for the bombers who set the bomb off in London that killed his daughter. And it's a very, very powerful film from an emotional standpoint. Normally with these types of action films, you get kind of a so-so story built in with all the crazy action. You actually enjoy the story here and the emotional depth this character goes through. Pierce Brosnan's fantastic in the movie. The director of this movie also did Casino Royale, GoldenEye, and Edge of Darkness, a great action filmmaker. And they really do a good job of making Jackie Chan a realistic action hero. He's not doing things a 30-year-old, 25-year-old would be doing. He's doing things that make sense for his character. He's fantastic in the movie. I thought that the score by Cliff Martinez was incredible. He also did the music for a movie called Drive with Ryan Gosling. I really enjoyed this film. It was cool to see Jackie Chan back in an action film. I gave it a 4 out of 5. And right now, the best movie in theaters, if you haven't seen it yet, is Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Go see Blade Runner.
It is that one last time.
It really
is.
is.
No, we definitely will see that one.
Good stuff.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Cool.
Kevin.
Thanks, Rob and Jillian. Have a good weekend.
You
Bye,
too.
guys.
All right, parents, listen up. Coming up, hundreds of thousands of car seats recalled because your kid could fly out if you crash. What you need to know is next.
Yeah, that's not good. But first, let's check in with Steve Ducey, see what's coming up on Fox and Friends. Hey, Steve.
Hey,
Happy
Steve.
Friday.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Jillian. Coming up on Fox and Friends a dozen minutes from right now, conservative students, some at the University of California at Berkeley, face threats of violence for their views, their political views, which are to the right of many of those who are on campus. We're going to talk to one of those students coming up on Fox and Friends. Also, the Attorney General for the United States of America, Jeff Sessions, is going to be dropping by. We're going to be talking to him about how the DOJ is giving sanctuary cities one last chance to change their ways. Also, Senator Rand Paul, he's in the news and he's on the show. It all starts about 11.5 minutes from right now, right here on the channel you trust for your morning news. Fox and Friends First comes back in about 2 minutes.